Hello and welcome to the Supernatural Track here at Continual. I'm your host, Gail Martin, and tonight we are talking about The Roads Not Taken, Season 1. What are some of the alternate universe things that could have happened, the plot changes, the twists, the things that almost did but didn't? What could have happened differently in Season 1? And where might that have taken the story? But before we start, let's let our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, including Melissa with the largest martini glass in the world.
I love it. Hi, I'm Melissa, and this is Kitty in the cone. Kitty in a cone. I have been a fan since the pilot first aired. I am a stalker of certain fan fiction writers on the panel, not mentioning any of your names. And that's it. I don't even remember my other Twitter handle, so let's just go with that.
Well, I gotta ask, that's not an e-collar. That's like an alien gonna capture you collar. What kind of collar is that?
It's an e-collar. She's just a very small, she's just a very small dog.
I had an e-collar on my animal, and it wasn't like it's gonna eat her. That's like Audrey from yeah.
All right, over to you, Carole.
My name's Carole Stokes. I've been watching Supernatural since season 3. I started writing fanfic in season 12, and I love coming to Continual to talk about all these aspects of Supernatural.
And Lola.
My name's Lola Laracy, and I'm a sci-fi writer and sometimes mystery writer, as we talked about in the last panel. I've been watching Supernatural since 2005, and I actually went back and watched the pilot, rewatched the pilot for this episode. And oh my God, it's just so different, and everybody's so different, and it just amazes me.
All right, done.
I am Dimeliora on Archive of Our Own and LiveJournal. I joined the fandom somewhere around season 7 and was shipping within less than a year. So now I write a lot of nonsense fan fiction, and I am very lucky to be invited back here to whine about how much I love this show every couple of weeks. So thank you.
Love to have you. Elektra.
I'm Elektra Hammond. I'm a writer and an editor, and I've been watching Supernatural since that very first episode aired.
All right, Stuart.
Hi, everybody. I'm Stuart Jaffe. I'm the writer of a gazillion novels, best known for the Max Porter Paranormal Mysteries. And I started, like Elektra, I started at the beginning and just kind of stuck with it.
And I'm Gail Martin. I'm Morgan Bryce. As Gail, I write epic and urban fantasy. As Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance. But all my modern worlds are ones Sam and Dean could walk into and feel right at home. I fell in love with the show halfway through season 11, binge watched 11 seasons in 4 months for the start of season 12, went down the rabbit hole and haven't hit the bottom yet. I never do. So that first season, everything's set into motion, episode by episode. They do a terrific job of building out this world and the background. We get little tidbits every episode on what's going on. But there are so many roads not taken, so many times when a different decision, a different reaction, a different insight could have made all the difference. So sticking to season 1, Melissa, and we'll go around several times, so you don't have to get all in on each one. But Melissa, give us one right off the bat.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. So what if, instead of John working on his merit badge for A+ parenting, what if he had left the boys with Bobby, for Bobby to raise? They would have still known about Supernatural. They would have gotten a great education. They would have gotten regular school education. They would have done things as kids. They still would have known all the lore. Bobby still would have taught them to hunt, but they would have had a much more balanced life. John could have visited him the same way that he visited Adam. What if?
What the hell? That's how I phrase it. What the hell?
Okay. Carole. Yeah, we lost her. Okay.
What if, just sticking with episode 1, like Melissa was doing, what if John had died instead of Mary? What would have happened if John had died and Mary had lived? Would she have reverted to being a hunter again? Would she at least have taken better care of the boys than parking them in? That's a no from Melissa on that. Would we have Mary Winchester's A+ parenting instead of John Winchester's A+ parenting? You know, what would have happened? What if?
Okay. Lola.
All the same things everybody say. Why the hell didn't he take them to Bobby and drop them off? And you know, who the heck, what kind of parent just leaves them in motel rooms for days upon weeks upon ends and then doesn't check up on them and just leaves them to fend for themselves? But you know what? That's 2005 them. This is 2023 us, but we're talking to 2005 writers and they've moved on. They don't care.
Okay. Elektra.
I went a different way. I keep thinking, what if they'd found John in that first episode and they had dropped Sam right back off at school and they actually went back and visited him occasionally, and it was all about John and Dean and Sam occasionally going off and hunting monsters, and Sam still got to get his college degree, and they actually had a semi-happy life instead of all that anger.
Okay.
That
Done.
would have been a totally different feel.
Okay. Done.
So I will stay with the pilot because we're on a good theme here. But mine is, I guess, a little bit more about a detail that I would have really enjoyed, which was I would have really loved to have seen more interaction between Jess and Dean, just to see how that would have played out. Like, would the two of them have formed an immediate camaraderie over how they love their Sammy and how they deal with him and kind of his own little quirks? Or would they have been jealous about which one of them knew him better? Would it have been kind of a rivalry between the two of them for which one of them really knew who Sam was? I think that would have been a really interesting dynamic that would have made it much more emotional for Dean later when he's dealing with the fact that she had to die for him to get Sam back. I think it really would have flavored that a little differently.
And Jess wouldn't be just a punchline in the first episode. It's like, oh yeah, Jess, she was on the ceiling and she blew up. That's right, I forgot about her. It would give her a little bit of something in the series. But you know, 2023 talking to 2005.
She was burned up, but she was still fridged.
Yep.
Stuart?
Yes, she was bridged.
Yeah, well, similar to a couple comments earlier, I was here in my head. Well, Dad's gone on a hunting trip and he's not coming back. You know, I need you to come help me. No, it had nothing to do with it. I've seen that life. I don't want a part of it, and I realized they forced him to in the end. But yeah, there's like a clear crossroads there that you could have. He could have had a whole different thing, and maybe, I mean, I guess neither of them really feel they all feel so responsible that to protecting everybody that they of course go fight these monsters. But even Dean, you know, as everyone's talking about the upbringing, in some weird parallel alternate world, there's a version where Sam convinces Dean that this was not a healthy way to live. And you know, they go find the Gilmore Girls and go revert back to their previous incarnations as actors and live a whole different life.
And I'd like to interject here. So I rewatched the two, you know, episodes as the pilot. I rewatched the pilot, and even before Sam went back to college, Dean was in the car looking at him, as like, hey, we can be to this next mission in, you know, 10 hours or whatever. Let's do it. And Sam was like, I need to be there. I need to be in my interview. And Dean was like, whatever. And I'm like, you're a sucky brother. I was thinking that you are a messed up brother. You suck. You do not want your brother to go to freaking law school at Stanford, whatever university. And you are only in it for yourself. And I was like, you suck, Dean Winchester. I love you. I love you. And I know it's 2005. You haven't fleshed yourself out yet, but you suck. So yeah, and in an alternate universe, he would be a good brother. He'd be like, we need a lawyer in the family. Go for it. Let's do it. Go to law school, and then you can represent us when we get in trouble.
Well, and I've read a number of very, very good fan fictions where Sam talks Dean into going with him. And Dean's a mechanic and Sam goes to Stanford, and they hunt on the weekends, or they hunt when a case comes up. So they haven't left the life altogether, but they are together. They've told John to take a hike, and they carve out a whole different life that still involves hunting, but doesn't mean Sam has to give up on his education. And yes, if anybody needs a good lawyer in the family, it's a Winchester. I totally get that. All right, folks, round 2. What else would you change in season 1? Back to Melissa.
I'm going to skip forward a bunch of episodes to Fate. What if the healer couldn't heal Dean? Dean died. You could stop it there, or Dean died and Sam sold his soul for Dean.
Also on my list. Good pick. Good pick.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Carole?
I have some like all over the place. So many what ifs could have ended in the early termination of the show.
Yeah.
So like in Wendigo, what if the Wendigo won? But of course, there's no more show. So I had several of those, but of course they're kind of dead ends. So.
Wendigo won.
They're never dead in the show, so even if they lose a battle, they can come back the next episode.
That's true. That's true. So yeah, there's always a lot of where the bad guy or the monster wins in general. But also in Faith, I'll go with what if Layla was healed? Like, Dean was so drawn to her and everything. Would he have just been able to leave? Would she, like what influence might that have had on his faith, and on his relationship with her, possibly.
Okay, Lola. You're muted.
Okay, so in the first episode, they get their father's journal from the police. What if they didn't get that journal? Because that journal is what laid out a large part of the series. They knew what they were up against. They knew where to go in that episode. So what if the police officer hadn't given them that journal? They would just be flying blind. They would have probably been like every other hunter and died within 5 years, which would have been, it would have sucked.
Again, shorter series, yeah.
Very
Di?
much shorter.
Back to you, Dime.
My next one was Bloody Mary. So specifically, I really wonder how the episode would have been structured and how Sam would have reacted if it was Dean's guilt that she was coming after. And he had a ton of it at that point already, even though he didn't know half of what he was going to feel bad about later. But he already had underneath his belt him kind of failing Sam not picking him, Sam's girlfriend dying so he could hang out with Dean again. Like there's a whole list of things that he could kind of fall back on for that. So what would Sam have done if it was Dean eating himself up with guilt and falling into that rabbit hole? And would Sam have still exposed to Dean his dreams and how he felt about them if he wasn't under the gun to do so?
All right. Our lineup has shuffled. Elektra.
Well, first, Bugs. What if they had walked up and said, right, just no, and walked away? I think we all would have been happier anyway.
Bugs.
Sorry, I just looked at that and said, I'm just not going there.
I had one for bugs where it said, what if the night was more than 2 hours long?
Yeah, that was a bit of a
That's a big
continuity.
plot hole.
Yeah.
There were
Plot hole.
problems there. Also, Scarecrow. What if the people in the town actually, gave a crap about the girl that they had raised as their own for however many years it was, 12 or 15 years? What if they had souls? That part about that episode always really bothered me. What if her adopted parents had actually said, no, you can't have our kid. It's just not happening.
Okay. Stuart.
I was wondering what if you could take the writers from the latter seasons and bring them all in, or even the newer, even if there's some of them are the same writers, they've learned a lot about how to actually write the show. Bring them in, because I always thought Yellow Eyes had so much potential. I mean, certainly as a villain, his introduction is burning this, the mother on the ceiling and all this. And then he never, for me, especially compared to the villains that come later, he never quite fulfills that promise. And I'd love to see the writers now be able to come back in time and write that the way it should have been written.
I thought you were going to go another way with that, where you bring the writers from the later seasons back, make them watch the first 5 seasons.
The Grand Canyon.
Well, sure, they can fix it all. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people would love to see the whole Leviathan thing done differently.
Oh, yeah. But if Yellow Eyes had been a better villain, would the boys early on been able to beat him? Because they weren't as good as hunters early
Well, I don't
on.
necessarily mean that he was better, is more skilled, but just literally, I mean, this is the writer
Better
brain of
written?
mine, but I don't think he was as terrifyingly, he just came out as kind of okay. He was terrifying at the first episode, and then he just kind of underwhelmed. And I would have liked to see him. It's not like they're going against God until the end. That wouldn't have worked if he was that bad. And he's not. He's not Lucifer, but I don't know. I would have liked to have seen him better written, I guess.
Well, what if the Winchesters actually talk to each other? So what
You're
if
crazy.
Sam said, Dean, I've been having these dreams and sometimes they come true and it really scares me. And Dean said, I really hated that you left. I would have come with you. Why did we do it this way? Let's hit the road. And John said, your mother made a deal. Sammy's vulnerable. I'm going to keep my distance from you so that I can hunt the bad guy. You guys go off and fight monsters, and I'll let you know when it's safe to come back. So much unnecessary drama could have been avoided. The whole first half of season 8, for example.
Every season they start off, something splits them apart and they have to come back together again, and that something is usually based on one of the things you already mentioned there. So if they if they actually listen to each other.
Yeah, and that could take it in so many interesting directions where they're still hunting monsters, they're still doing all the same things. It's just now they're not keeping secrets and filling in with conjecture, and they're much more unified from the get-go. I've read some good fanfics like that, and it would be fun to have seen that in the show. All right, Melissa, back again.
So because Stuart mentioned Azazel, I got to go there. What if in the pilot, instead of going back to school, Sam had just said, when Dean said, we could go hunting, Sam had said, yep, Jess wouldn't have died. But we needed Jess dying to spur Sam down the path that Azazel needed him. So that would have meant, let's see, who would be on the ceiling if it wasn't Jess? It had to be somebody that Sam cared deeply for. I guess that would be Dean. What would have happened?
Carole. Well, then we would have gotten, Sam from the last half of Mystery Spot, and he just would have gone, completely Rambo first episode. Would have been a very different series.
Or it would have been Sam and Jess hunting Azazel, trying to avenge the death of his brother.
Or Dean comes back from the dead and is an undead version of himself, and they're still at it.
There's a fan fiction for that one too, where
I'm sure there is, in quite a few different ways.
Hunter Sam, yes. Carole?
So along the lines of the Winchesters talking to each other, what if in Home, after they deal with the whole poltergeist and they go back to Missouri's, what if John actually had talked to them? What if he had come out and met with them and just talked with them and not hidden in Missouri's back room? And then she has to come back and say, why the heck didn't you talk to your sons and stuff? What if contact had been made at that point? They could actually have worked together as a unit, longer. Even if they went their separate ways, there would have been that, more dialogue, more cohesiveness. Sam wouldn't be like, oh, my dad hates me, and Dean stuck between them and all of that. But yeah, so it's kind of like along those lines.
Okay, Elektra.
Well, this is not coming out of the first season necessarily, but a page from the Winchesters. What if John had known something of his background and they had that home base way earlier on? What if they'd known about the bunker and they actually had a home? Or if they had the house still, just they had money and a house because the family won the lottery or something. There was an inheritance somewhere. Grandpa left the money. So they weren't spending some of their time scrabbling around with people looking over their shoulders at them a little askance. So they had the money to buy what they needed, and it was just, we have a home base and we can go hunt comfortably.
Okay.
That would have been for a whole different tone to it. They
All
could
right.
have fasted.
Don?
Going back to Scarecrow, I wonder how different it would have been if it was Dean that insisted they needed to move on and look for John instead of saying and finishing what they had started. And would his intention have been the same as Sam's, that sort of like vengeance, bloodlust that was driving him so fast on that he didn't want to slow down? Or would it have been done out of Dean's devotion to John at that point? And if it was the second thing, would Sam have been able to forgive him for it?
All right. Stuart?
So one of the things I've always wondered, since I at some point I found out, I'm sure you all know this, but I found out the whole backstory of how the angels actually came to even be a thing in the show, and I was wondering if they had figured that out earlier and actually introduced. I mean, if they had known what they were going to do, instead of it being something like, oh, we suddenly have more seasons and we need something, because that was until you get that whole thing going. It's especially in the first season, it is a monster of the week show, which is fine, but that's another one of those turning points. And if you could get the angels in earlier, it would, in a way, would make more sense, because that's something that's always bugged me, is that the angels are just they're quiet until when they wouldn't be in the world as it's created. You would think they love screwing around with Sam and Dean. Why not start earlier and really mess things up,
Yeah. Well, I would have loved to have seen Missouri as a more recurring character, where Missouri and Pamela and even Cassie, she had good instincts as a reporter. She was good, even if she and Dean didn't continue their relationship. She would have been a terrific asset as almost a quasi private eye, and then you put her with a couple of psychics, And they could have had kind of their own backup for not walking in blind to some of the situations, being able to find John sooner, maybe getting a heads up on what was going on with the demons. And I know Kripke wanted that isolation for the boys, but it would have just been great for them to have a psychic that they could touch base with, like we did with Bobby, who had all the lore books, that even if they weren't in every episode, or somebody they could tap so they didn't have to do it the hard way every time. Melissa?
Going back to Scarecrow, what if Sam hadn't left and met Meg? And like I know that it was all contrived, and he would have come across her or someone like her eventually. But in that particular moment, he was angry, he was alone, he was so much more vulnerable to her machinations. I just wonder, like, what if that hadn't happened? Would then that whole Sam drinking demon blood thing, would that have ever occurred if we didn't have that meeting Meg at when he was already like at a low point? I just wonder.
Okay, Carole.
Well, along the lines of, you were talking about, Cassie being a potential resource, and they met so many people that would have been, helpful. Even just, later on, it seemed to happen a bunch. We had Jody and Donna, and and so on, and Sarah from Providence was fantastic. She was intelligent. She was sophisticated, so that would have been helpful sometimes, when they had to do, sophisticated things. And she, accepted it. She found out what was going on, and she just rolled with it. So, what if she had left with them and traveled? She and Sam did start a relationship, and she traveled with them. Or even if she didn't travel with them, they could, they could draw on her, or she could join them from time to time. There's a few of them like that. Michael from Something Wicked, where he wants to protect his little brother. And so he ends up helping them, Sam and Dean, with their plan to get the Strika. What if he grows up and becomes a hunter? What if, what if the niece who was almost sacrificed in Scarecrow, she went off on her bus trip, but she knows what's out there. What if she comes back? So many people that they end up having to give the speech to, there are monsters out there, and then they just disappear.
Survivors
yeah.
from the
Yeah, and you would
Indigo.
think there, some of them probably were like, I'm going to forget this ever happened, but I'm sure many of them could not. That's how hunters are born. They're not, whelped out of a cannon or something. They're created because people go through traumatic monster situations, and then they're like, I now know what's out there, I have to do something. And yet they never kind of
Facebook group
capitalize.
of survivors who are getting around talking to each other. And
yeah there was definitely stuff they could have done along those lines that would have been really really interesting and enrich the whole world of it.
It's funny you talk about the survivors. I honestly did just read a story, and I don't remember who wrote it, but it was basically Sam after season 15. He's down, he's having a bad night, and he's just wondering if it's all been worth it. And he picks up on a conversation a couple of tables over at the bar, and it's the guy they saved from Wendigo telling his friends about getting saved by these two guys in a black car who came out of nowhere. And Sam realizes that it really did count. So it was a great story, picking up on maybe running into some of these people again later in life. But with Providence, she would have also been great to call and say, what do you think about this relic? What's this relic? What does it do? Can you find out about Providence?
She could totally have been helpful with the lore, not that Sam wasn't good with the computer, and but she had a whole body of knowledge, that would have been super helpful. And resources and contacts and things.
Well, that's my headcanon with Bobby raising them, is that it's not that they left the life, but they looked at the life, they took the life in a different direction. Like Sam doesn't go to law school. Sam goes and majors in like ancient dead languages or something that would be helpful for lore based, and Dean does the exact same thing. And so when they launch themselves out into being full-time or part-time hunters, they've got a much richer background in things because they've both gone to college, they've majored in something that's practical for hunting, because there's lots of things that could be practical for hunting. And it just sets them up as not just Bobby level expert, but they're better equipped to do the research both for themselves and for other hunters.
Because they're almost men of letters at that point.
And it's a choice for them rather than like Dean feeling he had no choice and then Sam kind of getting dragged into it. Yeah, he eventually does choose it, but at the beginning he's really sort of dragged back in. Thank you, Azazel, for killing Jess. That's the whole thing. So if that hadn't happened, Sam wouldn't have gone back in the life.
Before I got the line, who did we leave off with? Were we on Elektra? I think so.
Sorry.
I want to add something. I want to add something to that before I go on. If they were both at college, there are also combative, like medieval weapons forms that I could totally see them doing to get themselves into shape so that you can get better at swinging a machete. I mean, there are a lot of that kind of thing going on college campuses. I wouldn't have any experience with that kind of thing, but I know it's there somewhere. One thing I would love to have seen changed from that first season is when they were in Hibbing, I would love to have seen them run into Donna and at least cross paths with her that first time. It was such a wonderful opportunity that they somehow missed.
Okay.
I mean, the Benders were just people anyway. They didn't have to get into the monster stuff. But, I love Donna as a character, and I would have loved to see her earlier on.
Okay.
Maybe it would have been a different Doug then, too. Sorry.
Infinite Dougs.
Well, yeah, there's always another Doug in uniform.
I'm sorry, that tickled me a little because my brother's Doug and he does not need to be in a uniform. So let's see. Next up on my list was skin, actually. So we know from later seasons, especially, how very brutal Dean's choices can be when it comes to the safety of the two of them and the ability for them to continue on. So I really would have liked to have seen that cropping up in him a little bit earlier. Like if he had said no to this ridiculous ask in skin for them to go out to St. Louis and fight a murder charge, which isn't a thing that they really do, even if there's a weird security camera footage thing, they would have had so much less struggle later in the series because Dean wouldn't be a wanted man. His face wouldn't be on TV. People wouldn't think he was a murderer. They wouldn't have had to be on the opposite side of the table from Linda Blair. They could actually just hunted with her later on. Like it would have changed so much of their maneuverability and their ability to really go whole hog at cases if Dean had just been that character a little bit earlier, willing to say, no, I don't care if you knew this girl briefly in college. We're not driving to St. Louis for her.
Okay, well taken. Stuart.
Well, something Carole said, she was talking about all the kind of support system and other characters that came through. And so it made me think of going back to the whole discussion of the very first episode. Made me wonder what if this whole world of other hunters grows much more later in later seasons, where we actually repeatedly meet certain hunters who become friends in some respect. I think it would have been interesting if instead of Dean showing up, it had been one of those hunters saying, your brother needs you, not your father, who Sam has issues with. But if it was his brother, you probably wouldn't even needed to get rid of Jess. He would have been fighting for
Your
that right
brother's
away.
missing.
Would have gone running.
Your brother, he would have gotten as so far as your brother's missing, and Sam would have been out the door.
Yeah.
Jess
Well,
who?
Yeah, I would have also said in the Benders, what if Sheriff Kathleen had become a hunter and we saw her later in Hibbing 911 and she met Donna and we had, Sheriff Kathleen saying, okay, I didn't know this was out there, but I'm on board. But the real big twist in Dead Man's Blood is if they'd have just killed that other vampire girl instead of letting her get away, she wouldn't have been in that barn in Ohio at the end of season 15. So you just can't let them go. That's a huge twist coming out of season 1. Lola, you're back. Got another thought for us on season 1? You're muted. You're muted.
What you just said, it really sparked something, because I'm usually of the ilk, like, if they're not hurting anyone, let the monsters go. Let Jewel State go. Yes, she's a witch, but she's a good witch. Let them go, use your discretion. Not everyone needs to die. But you made the point that one of the people we saw early on was affiliated with the death of Dean in season 15. It's like, you have to look ahead. I mean, not everybody is going to turn good, especially if they're a vampire. If they're already a vampire, they're not going to break good. They've already broken bad. You need to get rid of them right now. So you have to think about that. You want to be, especially in season 1, Sam and Dean, they want to be humans and they want to save the day and save everybody. But sometimes you can't do that. Sometimes you really need to let these creatures go. And it's a conundrum because you want to be a humarian. I'm sorry, I'm just very tired because I just chased down my dog. But you want to help people, but you can't always do that. And you have to look ahead, even 15 years ahead. And mistakes you make in season 1 can get you in season 15.
Okay, Stuart.
Wasn't expecting to come back to me so quickly. I pass on this one. I just did.
That's okay.
Okay. Well, that means we're back to you, Melissa.
Cool. I cannot let go of the pilot. I cannot let go of the pilot. There were so many things that I love in the pilot. There's so many things that I'm like, if we'd only. What if, when Mary had to make that deal with Azazel, what if she then told John all about the supernatural? What if she started training him as a hunter? What if they had warded the house 7 ways to Sunday before Sammy's 6-month birthday? What if, not necessarily going back to hunting, but started researching Azazel, started doing all of that stuff that it took John years to do? Couldn't Mary was hunter royalty? Couldn't she have flexed that to?
She should have.
Find
That's a really
out
good point.
how to protect her baby. Like, what if because she had 4.5 years plus.
Even if she didn't confide in John, I hadn't even thought about the fact that, once she had a baby, you would think that house would be protected,
Right?
even secretly protected.
Not a grain of salt.
All the Campbells should have been there. It should have been like a soup convention.
Like,
all of them.
That has always bothered me. Is why you knew what was coming, and there was nothing in the deal that I recall that Azazel made that said, don't tell John. Did she just magically think it wasn't? Mary Winchester, A+ parenting for the win.
Yeah, darn. That's called nepotism, huh?
The deal was, though, that she had to let him in.
Yeah, she could have let him in. That doesn't mean that she had to let him out again.
Right, she could have been prepared.
Devil's
Should have been
trap
like
on
the
the
Azazel
ceiling.
Hotel. Azazel go in, but they don't come out.
Right, exactly. It could have been the Eagles and that shit. They can come in, but they can't come out.
You and your plot bunnies, Missy.
Mhm. And see, we're doing the writer's job from season 1.
Carol?
Let's go to the end. In Salvation, what if Azazel had just killed John then? Boom, John's dead. He's out of the picture. Now what? Or conversely, what if Sam had not shot John in the leg, but actually shot him and killed him? You know, to kill Azazel. So that would certainly have mixed things up for later, especially if Dean was already, you know, injured and they still get T-boned. And then, you know, does Sam sell his soul for Dean then because there's no John to do it? Or, you know, what's going to happen? Shenanigans.
Elektra.
I'm going to pass this round. There's
Okay.
too much going through my head right now. You
Time?
guys have broken me.
Okay, we'll come back. Time?
So going back to the benders, which I know has already come up once or twice, what would have happened if they've both been caught, like at the same time? Would they have been used as sort of a diversion from the normal and hunted at the same time and released? And we have this really cool, like predator style through the jungle fight? Or would they have been fighting against each other to try to get the benders to release one of them first to be hunted to save the other one? How would that mechanic have kind of played out? And more importantly, which one of them would have come out on top in that situation if they were both locked in that cage?
Oh.
Very good. Stuart?
Well, I'm still thinking about, Carol keeps saying things that make me go off in places. So I was just thinking about this idea that if Sam had killed John at the end, then, I mean, the kind of person he is throughout the whole show, he would be emotionally devastated by that. No, especially because there would have been so much unfinished business in that relationship. I'm not even sure that might have been something that might have stopped him from hunting. You know, I think there's a lot more to explore with that idea of just because it's not just oh well, then they wouldn't be able to do X, Y, or Z. It literally would have been a whole different course. You know, and knowing the way the boys work in this whole show, he would find some way to, in his head, blame Dean for putting him in that position, at least for half a season, to just, you know, to keep them apart and eventually have them come back together. That would have been wild.
Yeah, playing off that same idea, what if Sam had shot John, then they get T-boned, then Sam tries to make a deal for Dean, and they say, no, we don't want your soul, we want you to be the boy king. And he says yes to save Dean, and then Dean accepts the role as his knight. And now we've got two dark hunters out there, you know, breaking all the rules, with Dean, instead of being horrified and judgmental about Sammy's power, going, wait a minute, we can use this. You're my Sammy. You can do no wrong. Sure, you're the boy king of hell. We can work with that. I sign up. I will be right next to you. You know,
that would be wild, especially when you get into the later seasons and God starts showing up.
Yeah.
Sam's boy king slogan would be, you know, the new boy king, now with compassion.
Now with book learning.
Oh, they could have, you know, and if it was Sam as the boy king and Dean as his knight, that's a good cop, bad cop, where Sam gets to be the good cop.
And Dean does everything he loves. Dean gets to get tail, drink beer, and beat people up. And that's what Dean wants to do.
Okay. Last comments, Lola, did you have anything to add?
I had kind of an alternate theory that really isn't a pleasant theory. I think I've already forgotten it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've been chasing my dog down. I found my dog. She's just angry because I've been giving her this herbal remedy for ear infections and she doesn't want it. And so she's been hiding and she's angry with me. So that's what I've been doing for most of the hour. I'm sorry.
That's okay. You know, speaking of dogs, what if Rumsfeld hadn't been taken out by that demon and Bobby had, you know, his Rottweiler for the rest of the time? Maybe we find out later that Rumsfeld is already a hellhound. That name could have been a clue. And so Bobby actually had a tame hellhound. I would love to see that. So folks, we have, as usual, blown through our hour. So please go around and let everybody know where we can find you online. Melissa?
Hi, I'm Melissa. You can find me on Twitter at Tin Hat Daydreams.
Okay. Carole?
You can find me here on Facebook, especially in Continual and in the TFWNC group. On Twitter, I am true_firesign10. As Firesign10 without the true, I'm a co-host of So Get This, the lore of supernatural fanfic on Spotify. I'm also under that name on Instagram and AO3, mind the tags. And as Ellis Colton, I'll be publishing my first romance book later this year.
Okay. Elektra?
I'm Elektra Hammond. You can find me at untilmidnight.com, and I'm Elektra at Wandering Shop on Mastodon.
Very good. Dime?
I am Dimeliora on both LiveJournal and Archive of Our Own, and I am no longer on Twitter, so just those.
Okay. Lola?
I'm no longer on Twitter either. I know the jerk in charge got somebody who's supposed to be in charge, but until she truly takes charge, and I'm sure that things are good hands and their employees have toilet paper, I'm not back on Twitter anymore. So I'm not on Twitter. But I am, if you look up Lola Larisy, Lariscy, you'll find me. It's either going to be me or a bunch of dead old ladies who I'm related to.
Okay, that narrows it down. Stuart?
You can find me at the surprising website, stuartjaffe.com, where you can sign up for a newsletter and get 2 full novels for free. So why not do that?
Very good. I'm pretty easy to find online at gailzmartin.com, morganbryce.com. I'm on all the major social media platforms under one or both of those names. So if you spell them right, you'll find me. I run the Supernatural TFWNC group here on Facebook. I'm a columnist for the Winchester Family Business blog, but most of the time you can find me here on Continual. So thank you all so much for being wonderful panelists. We'll come back and do the same thing for season 2 pretty soon. But thank you all so much for being here, and thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There will be more Supernatural coming up on Continual, so we'll see you online.